Hi.
Hello, everyone.
I see you've picked up Claire Core's "Hello People" thing. Yeah. Hello, people. I s Yeah, and I haven't been raped yet. Yeah. Yeah, I preferred I preferred her older videos personally that were more like philosophical and polemical. Not saying her recent videos are bad, but you know what I mean. Yeah. I I'm not sure if I've seen that one. Alright. Yeah, it looks as though she's deleted it, or at least made it private. Well, I just typed the words "divine stupidity" into her channel search and nothing came up. Well, it's probably archived somewhere.
Oh, he wasn't one. Okay, actually watched a previous stream. I think that the one that was on the same day as the Democratic debate. So he had to quit earlier because he wanted to not to miss the cringe while it was live. Yeah, it's by the way. Speaking of political debates, it's said that Cat doesn't make political videos because imagine if he would make a supercut of Democratic debate the same way he did E3 supercuts. That would have been dope.
I've just
I've heard the name, but what is this game about? It's kind of like oh oh what? Oh, mm, oh, yeah. Mm,
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah.
I mean, that's why it's called hot takes. Takes so hot they can melt steel beams. Yeah, yeah, and the non sequitur.
I think I and I think there are more female child abusers than there are male. I can't really remember. So yeah, the feminist response. I don't see how that works really as an excuse. Like, yeah, and
Yeah,
well, I mean, it's also like they're saying that um sorry, how do I formulate this properly? It's like they're basically conceding that the courts and stuff are prepared to put children in the custody of abusive mothers, which is kind of bad. Like, you know what I'm saying? And besides which, it's also bes- besides which, it's also just retarded because it's not like the longer you spend with children, the more likely you are to hit them. At least not if you're a halfway decent person. So,
Right. Okay,
you
can you
know,
hear me now? You should be able to hear me now. It might have been just me because, yeah, it looks like my microphone wasn't set to that audio.
So I checked, the stream, and Ashley can be heard properly, but not sure about you, because when I checked the sound on the stream, you weren't speaking. So
Yeah, so what
uh,
happened was when I opened up OBS, for some reason it wasn't set to my microphone, so I guess I gotta remember to double check that. Although I've been lucky, I've been really lucky the past few times. I think that's only one other time that that's happened. But Prince, thank you for catching that early. And if you want to hop on, I sent you the link via Twitter. And Pill Leader, I sent you the link via Discord if you also want to hop in. So I'll go back and I'll read that first section again. Um,
Discord.
Not seeing your father when you are small, never being with him, having a remote father, an absent father, a workaholic father is an injury, Robert Bly writes in Iron John. It is a very serious and common injury. Bly tells us that since the early 1980s, at endless men's gatherings, he has heard men state over and over in 100 different ways that there is not enough father. He warns that boys who have not had enough fathering will suffer from father hunger for the rest of their lives, searching for the emotional connectedness and sense of masculine identity that never got from their father. That they never got from their father. Such hungry sons hang around older men like homeless do around a soup kitchen. One might expect that Bly's deep awareness of this father hunger and the pain it causes so many men, including him, would lead him to work on improving the situation. He could do much to help men who look to him for guidance and are themselves fathers to become better fathers. He could focus attention on what can be done to change the socialization of today's young boys so that when they grow up, those who become fathers will be involved. Caring, responsible. At least future generations of men would be spared the suffering. Then she continues, people who have suffered from a particular problem or have lost a family member or a close friend to drugs or violent deaths, or a drunken driver, often find solace and emotional renewal in working toward changes that will prevent the same suffering in others. It seems puzzling, then, that Bly and other members of the mythopoetic wing of the men's movement have not made this a major focus of their attention. In fact, Bly concludes his discussion of fathering by simply stating that the situation of too little father is probably not going to get better. The best Bly seems to offer now and in the future is second best, the soup kitchen, of hanging around older men, instead of the real thing, a caring, involved father. He focuses almost exclusively on male initiation rites as the healing path that will restore to fatherlessness men a sense of connection with men and a sense of their own masculinity. In support of this emphasis, he tells us that in most traditional cultures, old men simply go into the women's compounds with spears one day when the boys are between 8 and 12 and take the boys away. Up to that point, the boys have lived exclusively with the women. He gives the example of New Guinea, where the initiated men live together in separate houses and come unannounced to lead the screaming, terrified boys away from their mothers. But Bly ignores anthropological research indicating that this is precisely those societies where little boys are deprived of fathering that have elaborate, often excruciatingly painful male initiation rites. Anthropologists tell us that when the little boy has only his mother to identify with, then the initiation rites serve psychologically to brainwash the primary feminine identity and to establish firmly the secondary male identity. In brief, the crisis in male identity is only a problem when the father is not involved in early child rearing, thus depriving his son of a male role model and emotional bond. The research points to another connected problem. While many single mothers succeed in raising fine sons, the fact remains that fatherless boys are at higher risk for antisocial violent behavior. They often grow up insecure with respect for masculine identity, which can lead to an exaggerated concern with rejecting everything feminine, and a need to prove masculinity by acting extremely tough, callous, eager to fight. Anthropologists refer to this as protest masculinity, and sociologists as hypermasculinity. Bly recognizes this problem. He quotes approvingly a Detroit police chief who points out that the young men he arrests not only don't have any responsible older men in the house, they have never met one. Since it is clear to Bly and his colleagues that the real problem, on so many levels, is the absence of an involved, nurturant father, why are they so unconcerned with encouraging men to become such fathers? Okay. Let me get the next page here because I did run into that one. Honestly, like, I think there's issues, I think, with Bly's perspective, right? That he just, like, takes rights from some random culture and then says, oh, look, this is a great model to go on. I mean, we're kind of straw manning here because I haven't actually read, like, Iron John. I've seen him do different, like renditions of the poem and things like that. But, so I don't know the degree to which he's just like relying on a few different rights and then kind of just emulating it. But it seems like she's at least acknowledging the problem of single motherhood, and she seems to be aware of the fact that this is kind of the issue, right? Is there's absent fathers, but obviously I don't think she's going to be, placing any responsibility on women for why there's a fatherlessness epidemic.
Because it's always the fault of men somehow.
Yeah, it seems like it. And it seems like she hasn't really worked around the problem of the initial part of it, which is that she's saying, why complain about quantity when we could just have more quality?
Yeah, that's... there's probably a name for this fallacy, but I can't think of it right now.
I mean, it's almost like a whataboutism. Because I don't think anybody's disagreeing. Nobody is going to say, like, no, we don't need to have better fathers. Like, of course we could have better anything, But I guess the other thing, too, is this definition of hypermasculinity and protest masculinity. I'm not sure if I've heard the term protest masculinity outside of this text here.
Well, I mean, as far as terms go, it's kind of, I think, makes sense. So it's overcompensating, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably actually legit. So I'll give her that. That's actually linked to any studies that talk about this, because it's when you say, oh, research has shown, it's really, really important to say which research, when it was done, who did it, because, well, it's not that I don't trust her. Well, I don't, but even if I trusted her, better to double check yourself, because, well, historically, when someone is talking about research, well, usually they misrepresent it, either deliberately or more often because they misunderstood it. It's, have to kind of give them cut them some slack, because, well, it's not everything is easy to understand, but still better to double check, especially if it's like in mass media, when they report about some scientific research or some paper that was published. Chances are they misrepresented in some way.
Right. All right, let's see where she's going for this. I mean, so far it's at least she's acknowledged a little bit of the problem. She's actually gotten further than most of these feminists have so far. So maybe there's hope. Maybe there's a little bit of hope. We'll cross our fingers. The likely answer to this question, and by the way, that question was, why are they so unconcerned with encouraging men to become such fathers? The likely answer to this question became clear to me when I recently attended a symposium on fatherhood and found that many of the men there were uncomfortable even talking about nurture and fathering, because this suggests to them that fathers are interchangeable with mothers. One of their major concerns was to differentiate the role of the father from that of the mother, lest fathers lose their masculinity and become effeminate. Since mothers have traditionally been the nurturers and daily caretakers, the father's role must be more distant and more detached. They seem to be saying. But there was considerable confusion among these men. For while they expressed such views, they also bemoaned the traditional detached father, and those who had young children exhibited deep emotional and nurturant ties to them. The essence of their conflicted feelings was captured in an anecdote told. Excuse me, I'm getting a sore throat for some reason. Okay. For while they expressed such views, they also bemoaned the traditional detached father, and those who had young children exhibited deep emotional and nurturant ties to them. The essence of their conflicted feelings was captured in an anecdote told by one of the men. He described approvingly a truck driver he had met who fully shared child care with his wife. Because the truck driver did not define nurturant child care as a primary activity, because he identified himself as a truck driver, not as a nurturant father, his fathering role did not interfere with his masculinity. It seems that many men fear that if they allow themselves to develop traits of nurturance, empathy, and caring, they will lose their male identity. This reminds one of 19th century fears that if women were allowed to go to universities to think, to work outside the home, they would lose their feminine identity. Let's see.
I think it's been shown in some survey data that I don't know what the percentages are, but at any rate, a significant percentage of men do consider nurturing to be part of their masculine identity. I remember Karen Strawn talking about it. So
Yeah, well, and it reminds me of when Halsey had mentioned on TFM stream, that he thinks there's like something like really wrong or really unnatural about men as caregivers, and I thought that was a very very strange take, but. Maybe I'm a little bit too cucked and egalitarian. Maybe that's the problem, but
no,
I
he's
really,
weird.
yeah, he's pretty weird. Let's see. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, as a gay person, I'm prejudiced, right? I'm a little bit biased, but I think that generally speaking, the major issue is having not enough parents, and then worrying about whether or not the parents are spec'd to the optimal roles. Your support and your DPS. I think that's a little bit secondary to the primary issue of like we should have a minimum 2 parents per children. Although I'd suggest probably not more than that. I think that's probably a little step too far if we open up that way. All right, and it looks like Bundle of Honks may be hopping in here.
Fun.
Okay. So I have the next page up here.
Hi, Hunks.
Are you in here now? Oh yeah, looks like you are. All right. Oh, and Prince is in here too.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, my mic was muted for a while, but hi. I was going to say 2 things. First of all, I just wanted to let you guys know I have some good news for the ICMI. I'm definitely going to be able to go and be just all right because I'm getting an insurance claim, which should be in my hands by next week. The other thing is that I was wondering if you guys had listened to Warren Farrell's talking about how fathers are so important towards raising children, especially boys, because they set boundaries or they learn to like set boundaries in ways that women like don't really know how to do at all.
I'm just testing. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Oh, okay.
And on the Warren Farrell, yeah, it's been a while since I've listened to him, so I kind of have a general pulse on him. He's basically if somebody breathed life into a koala bear and then the koala bear did men's rights. That's just how I see him.
I can explain the basic gist of the argument. By the way, if anyone wants to hit the like button, I'm sure Spacepan will appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Also, I'm 2 subscribers away from 400. That's very exciting.
Wow.
I know. Look at you. Look at you. Look at you.
Soon enough, we can be sisters. But okay, so the thing is with Warren Farrell, this is what he has described as what men do. So when men are around and they start playing with the kids, men actually let the kids roughhouse. And even if women decide, like, oh, I read a parenting book and it said I should roughhouse, they don't do it in the same way as men. You know, men like actually enjoy it. They're like, wait, I can play games with my kids. I can get them to ride on my back and, you know, we can go after the other kid like we're a monster and it will be kind of fun, you know, things like that. And women just are like, let's like wrestle. You know what I mean? Like it's just, it doesn't, you don't have that kind of creativity unless you're biologically male most of the time. Like you just don't think about doing those kind of things in the same way. Very, very rarely, you know? So the thing is that men start doing those type of games and then they set boundaries. It's like, and then they learn to have a trusting relationship with the kid where it's like, yeah, we can do this fun thing. Just, hey, you accidentally hurt your brother. So now you have to apologize. And if you do that again, you know, if you're not careful, we are maybe going to have to stop roughhousing. And so then they get the sense that there are limits, and men are better at setting limits than women, because women have a tendency to just like make a bunch of really, really arbitrary rules, and then the kid is going to break them. You know, like for example, I had this friend, my friend's girlfriend the other night was babysitting for these kids, and the kids just went insane and she couldn't do anything, and she was just sitting there like, oh my god. And she ended up blaming the mother, which is I think reasonably fair, but at the same time you can go there and like set good boundaries with kids that they're going to follow. You know, like I don't know what was the first rule they must have broken, but it probably was very minor. So then they're just like, okay, we can walk all over this babysitter because they say something, you know, if you say something like, hey, you can't come in the kitchen. I'm in here talking to my boyfriend on the phone or something, you know what I mean? Like some weird, like stupid ass lazy babysitter rule, which I'm not saying she did, but maybe she did. And then the kid like goes in the room and then says, get out, you know, and then the kid runs out. They realize that they can walk all over this person. You know what I mean? And so, like, a good male babysitter would probably do something a little bit more like, okay, so what are reasonable rules? What are not so reasonable rules? Well, it's not so reasonable for me to be the babysitter acting like the kids can't come and say things to me. That's probably not reasonable. And that's kind of something that we know intuitively, you know? And be like, okay, so we can play games, we can have fun, we can, you know, get engaged with the kids, just say there are limits. And then you don't even have to order the kids around. Like you don't have to like come up with a list of 20 things they can't do and then just sit there waiting for them to mess up, which is what I've always noticed women tending to do. And when I was a kid, it tended to be like that with females. And so men have a better way of actually training the children to behave, because they get to learn specifically like what are the actual bad things to do in life, what are the things that are harmful that I really shouldn't do, because if I actually do these things, I personally feel bad. You know what I mean? Like if you break your dad's rules, it's usually going to be for a good reason, and it's also usually something that you already feel bad about.
Yeah, there's
Assuming that,
definitely
assuming that we're
Oh, go ahead.
assuming that we're going to discipline the kids at all, and we're not all going to be that one guest we had on Gaytriarchy.
Like Dana Martin, like the most perfect
Yeah.
person ever.
Yeah, but I mean, like you have that's like working two full-time jobs. The type of parenting that she was doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because that's the common misconception about unschooling, is that it turns into unparenting, because they figure, oh great, I don't have to send the kids to school. We're just gonna hang out. They're just gonna learn naturally, and it's like, well, you know, like you got to find activities for them to do, and like if you're not keeping them engaged, then you know they're gonna get bored and they're gonna like start testing limits and start kind of getting into mischief. So the easiest way to kind of control children in a constructive way is to have some kind of distraction, some kind of focus, and to be able to kind of abandon that in favor of something else if it's not holding their interest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah,
Oh,
so I
by the
think
way,
that.
just
Oh,
while I remember this, because I'm gonna have to go in about 20 minutes. Ashley, are you homosexual or bi?
Yeah, I'm bisexual.
Okay, just checking because you're gonna come on Gaytriarchy. It's not like a prerequisite, but we're gonna be having this other bi guy who
Yeah,
I mean,
Logan McCree.
yeah, I let
yeah,
him know.
yeah, and so I'm thinking about like how I'm gonna advertise it exactly. Okay, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, the thing is it is definitely by far a bonus. Like gay guys and bi guys go to the front of the line type of thing to get on the stream, but.
Cool.
Yeah.
You're, you're,
Okay.
you're you're tired of me finding straight people as guests. Like find guests, and I'm like, I found a woman. You're just like, ah.
Sometimes, if you think about things that your good friends might be thinking, you're fairly qualified to make that determination without them telling you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so this is refreshing because since these essays are only like 5 pages each, we're actually in like the last full page of this one. So let's see. Oh, do I have? Let me see. What page do I have up? Okay, I need to get up. I need to get the next one up. Okay. So let's see if Myriam Miedzian can close this out with some insight. She's been dancing around the problem. She knows the problem is really absent fathers, but we'll see if she can really, if she tackles it or if she ducks for cover. Could it be then that Bly and his colleagues are more concerned with proving their fierceness, which, as they see it, differentiates them as real men, than they are with encouraging good fathering, which they fear would render them effeminate? If so, they are assuming, mistakenly, that a man cannot both be deeply involved in the care of his children and exhibit some of the traits traditionally connected with masculinity. In fact, in a study when a group of fathers who are primary caregivers were given the BEM sex role inventory, no significant difference emerged between them and the husbands of primary caregiving wives. The BEM test is intended to determine how masculine, feminine, or androgynous a subject is in very traditional terms. This is not to say that nurture and fathering would leave men unchanged. Nurturing fathers become more patient, more tuned in, more sensitive to other people's needs, comments a researcher in the field. Hey, Honks, I think that your mic is picking up a lot of extra
Oh, it
air.
is.
I think
Yeah, I'm trying to.
check your settings and see if your microphone is also set to the same device, because it may be that or something like that. I'm not sure if that's it.
Yeah, hold on. I'm gonna try and do something here.
In the worst case, you could mute while you're not speaking and then unmute yourself.
Oh goodness, how do I mute myself?
In the
There's just
Hangouts, there's a little
yeah.
microphone, and they're little hieroglyphics. The one on the left.
One on the left. Okay.
Yeah, I always mute myself when I'm not speaking anyway.
Okay. So wait, I was actually so on this study they showed that I forget, was the comparison between nurturing fathers and mothers or between nurturing fathers and other men? What fathers are given primary notes? Oh, okay. So they're saying that when men are primary, oh no, and the husbands of. Okay, yeah. So if you have a traditional man versus a primary caregiving man, apparently on this study, there were no significant difference, but they did note that there were some changes to note, which, I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? That kind of actually falls in line with this idea that fathers as caregivers bring something to the table that isn't necessarily brought to the table with mothers. And I suppose the complementarian colloquial to that would be, or corollary, I should say, would be that caregiving mothers would bring something to the table that not necessarily is brought to the table by the caregiving fathers. I would guess though that it's more down to personality and that there's very strong like personality differences between men and women. And I wonder if there'd be a way to control for that. Like if you were to get a bunch of very feminine men and compare them with women, and then get a bunch of masculine women to compare with the caregiving fathers. I don't know. I wonder if that's. I'm sure someone has thought to test that as well. Okay, so she continues. We live at a time when 24% of children are growing up without any father in the home, when close to half of divorced fathers never see their children. Rates of violent crime committed by men have soared. Over 350,000 Americans have been murdered in the last 16 years, with many perpetrators coming from fatherless homes. When given the opportunity to get in touch with their feelings, many men spend much of their time bemoaning the lack of fathering they got. It is disappointing that at a time of such intense crisis, men like Bly are doing so little to remedy the situation. My own research has led me to conclude that much can be done. Introducing child-rearing classes in all our elementary schools would be a big step in the right direction. When I visited...
What?
I know. I got... Let's see how she finishes this.
Oh my god.
It's like the worst thing.
Is this like training elementary school students to be better babysitters in elementary school? Like, what are you like? Okay, like, lady, you're wearing a scarlet letter and it stands for commie on like some. That sounds communist as fuck.
Well, it reminds me of I read this book and it was about like education, just public education in general, and one of her chapters was, what do you mean you're opposed to dental hygiene courses? Like, aren't you in favor of dental hygiene? And it's just this whole issue with public education where it's easy for people to just add on things, and then if you say, no, I don't think the kids need to be learning this, then people say, oh, well, you just don't think that's important. And it's like, when you look at the way the education system is already set up, you know, they divide it up into 7 or 8 different courses in a day, and you're supposed to try to learn within like 45 minutes some significant chunk of a subject. And, you know, schools that switch to like the trimester kind of system where you have like longer courses, like longer individual class periods and less, you know, time in transit from class to class, those seem to work out a little bit better. But yeah, this whole idea that you're going to teach children about child rearing seems like it's completely stupid.
A waste of time, considering that people forget almost everything they learn in school as is, apart from basic math and literacy.
You can also add in the fact that mothers are actually more likely to physically abuse their children compared to fathers. And
Yeah.
that might actually be a factor in what these criminals from single mother homes are coming from.
Yes,
Is that they're actually-
we may humbly suggest. Actually, we brought that up before you were gone, but that was something that occurred to us before.
Yeah, the child maltreatment 2017 study, if you need, proof.
Yeah,
Thank
it's 50.
But women are with the children. See, women have to deal with the children, so therefore they get a pass. They get a pass for beating the crap out of them. Because if only men had to deal with them, then of course.
Yeah. This happened to me once. This happened to me once, guys, when I was like babysitting someone's kid for like a week, and they were like crying and doing things that kids do. And this was just so unbearable that I just couldn't stop myself from beating the shit out of them. Like it was, I mean, come on, it was going to happen.
It was just natural. It was just inevitable.
Or, okay, you could also be like that woman in Brazil who literally killed her own boy because he reminded her of the father. And
is that the one who like beat her son's head in with a rock or some shit?
Probably.
Was it the one that castrated?
Some big dyke.
I thought you were talking about the lesbian couple that fucking castrated their son because they wanted them to be a girl.
No, that's a different case.
Yeah, it's a different one.
Multiple cases. It's actually...
This is what happens when feminism gets to the poorer parts of South America, apparently.
Yeah, the dyke menace must be stopped.
Me and Black Knight Patriarch are definitely going to have a stream eventually where we take on the lesbian question, because someone has to. Everyone's too damn polite to speak truth to power, but but we are
except
not.
for my old lesbian roommate who literally had a mental breakdown, and then during her like manic phase when she was just saying whatever the fuck came to her mind, we were talking about her ex-girlfriends or something, and she was like, Prince, just so you know, no matter what a lesbian tells you, all lesbians want the cock. Even me. I have fantasies about fucking my black priest. I can just hear in his voice that he'd have a really big dick. I say that all the time, but I just...
Yeah, I was about to say, like, lesbians in all likelihood are not even real, which I have, like, actual reasons for thinking that I could, spend 2 hours talking about, but yeah, I'm not going to get into it now.
Well, I
But
remember
yeah,
you sent me the numbers, and it was like abysmally tiny how few lesbians there are.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't think that they're real. I think that they just have issues. I mean, God, I hope nobody hears me say that. But
See,
no,
this is trying to go to for the real spicy takes.
No, okay. Wait. I would say that most of them aren't real. That's the better thing, because it's like, I mean, there probably are some. I've never known a single lesbian who hasn't, like, eventually at some point either tried men or just gone back to men or dates exclusively men now, including the dykiest girl I have ever met in my life, who was like actually my friend. Aside from that one roommate, but I wasn't really very good friends with her. Like, I kind of stopped hanging out with her when we stopped living together after that whole mental breakdown thing. But no, this one friend of mine is a really, really, really good friend. Like, she actually just loaned me a fairly sizable amount of money because I'm gonna be able to pay her back like next week, and helped me move from San Francisco because she drives trucks, and so she did that. And she used to be like a girlfriend every 2 weeks type lesbian, and just kind of like one of those weird lesbians.
Yeah, they do seem really, really unstable, a lot of them, don't they?
Well, no, she was more of the like lesbian that acted like a straight guy, and it was like she would find a new one and just be kind of like, well, you're too crazy. No, and then somebody else would come along and she'd be like, okay, cool. You're too crazy. I would call her after not talking with her in a month or two, and she'd be like, whatever happened to that girl? And she's like, what girl? That's kind of how she was. But now she dates exclusively men, and I could probably get her to come on Gate Cherokee and spill it, like, because it's not that I don't think that she's attracted to women. I think that she is definitely attracted to women. I think that would be kind of undeniable at this point. But I imagine that she would say, because this is just knowing her, she would probably say, you know what? I was scared of the dick. She was never scared of guys. She always had like more guy friends as actual friends, but she probably would say, I was scared of the dick, but then after this new, movement of feminism and everything, I just couldn't deal with all the girl drama. So I realized I had to figure out an appreciation for the cock. And then it turned out I liked it more than I thought I would. So here I am. It's probably what she would say.
Well, I mean, if she doesn't want to deal with craziness while dating, just shouldn't date women.
Oh, yeah.
Prince, I've told Derek about this. I knew this girl in secondary school who was like an infamous whore, basically. Like, she literally had a cock library on her phone, and she was really open about it, of like pictures she'd taken, and she would go about showing it to people. And, she called herself bisexual, but I don't remember her ever actually being with a woman. And then one day...
Bisexual.
Right. But then she was with a guy who turned out to be just, basically fucked up in many ways. Like, she found some really disturbing things on his phone or in his search history or something. And then she announced on her Instagram that she'd quote-unquote realized that she was a lesbian.
That's
so,
interesting.
Yeah.
But by the way, I was going to quickly say about the... Oh, geez. I'm gonna have to go. That's one thing, but there was some other thing I was gonna say about lesbians. Oh, I just wanted to say about my friend. Now that she's been dating guys, she's like, no, guys are crazy too. They have different issues. But what she has described is she was like, yeah, they have all these issues of being like really, really insecure about like women and dealing with women and stuff. Like they feel really ashamed of all these things. It's weird. And I'm like, oh, I think I know where that comes from. So,
All right, let's hear how she closes this out. So we're gonna see how she solves the problem. How is she gonna solve the fatherless problem? So it starts with educating children on how to be better parents. Somehow this is going to, I guess, prevent the little girls from divorcing their future husbands, right? Somehow it's going to prevent all these problems.
It's always the boys' fault.
Of course,
Yeah.
it's for the boys, yes. When I visited such classes at inner-city elementary and upper-class private schools, I was amazed at the level of enthusiasm that the young boys exhibited for learning about young children and interacting with them, when given permission to do so. It is tragic that by the age of about 6, most boys have learned that anything having to do with babies and childcare is girls' stuff. These classes sensitize boys and girls to the needs of young children, deter them from child battering, and encourage young boys to view themselves as future, involved, caring, responsible fathers.
okay. So,
Objection. Okay.
wait, yeah, I have an objection. Boys are not trained to think that. See, this is a misconception. She's already wrong. No, it's not that boys have been conditioned to think that kids and child rearing and those type of things are girl stuff. It's that all the fucking little girls that they know are all into babies and Barbies and crap. And they're not. That's all they need to know. That's all kids care about, really. At the end of the day, they don't care about what the teacher says to them when they're, really little. And so she's mistaking. This is just a classic case of somebody mistaking what they think is social engineering coming from the patriarchy and then trying to undo it with actual social engineering.
Yeah, all of these feminists are like hardline social constructivist. But it reminds me of Christina Hoff Sommers had mentioned there was a study, right, where they had a group of boys and a group of girls, and they gave them this like toy, which was like a baby and a carriage, and the girls play with it like as intended, and the boys decided to use the carriage as a catapult to like fling the baby and see how far they could fly it. It's just like very typical.
There was another study that showed that baby was it chimpanzee, not chimpanzees, like some monkeys. They exhibit the same gendered preferences for toys as human babies, and unless there's a monkey patriarchy, well, this is genetic. Also, speaking of, like it says that, well, what did she said? After 8 years, boys start behaving differently. Well, maybe because gender differences between boys and girls, they are not as apparent at first, and the more they age, the bigger they become, and when puberty hits, the behavior and the interests are pretty different.
Yeah,
it's
before
kind of hard to
puberty.
tell gender traits when they're a larva.
Yeah, before puberty, children are more or less androgynous to each other. So
Not entirely, though. I mean, like, I remember there was
not
such a
entirely.
difference between the little boys and little girls in like kindergarten, and I was one of the leaders of the little boys, actually.
No, yeah, the brains are actually kind of different in some ways.
Yeah, the boys'
I think
brains
it's more
are bigger.
subtle. Yeah.
Well, there's that.
And not
And
even
then-
being
no,
a
no,
sassy
no.
asshole.
There's things like which I mean, you think back to this and it makes perfect sense. Females are more they respond better to the approval of others, which I think is one of the reasons. Not definitely, I mean, teachers just prefer little girls, but what I call feminist teacher's pet syndrome, I guess I should just call it FTPS. Little girls are apt to be like, oh, the teacher really like this, oh cool, and then try to kiss up to the teacher. And then also teachers just prefer little girls as a rule.
Yeah, well, because they are less
Oh, yes, definitely.
rebellious, more like wouldn't say subservient. That kind of sounds wrong. Yeah, that's
Compliant?
schools are not as oppressive and.
Let's just say less energetic.
In fact, I would even go as far as to say that they're abusive to little boys.
Oh, they definitely are. Very
Yeah,
abusive.
like I was abused a lot by my teacher, and even though I was actually the most well-behaved kid in the class.
Oh, guys, I gotta go. I gotta go sell some clothes. Good to talk to you.
All right, keep it easy. Thanks for dropping by. Terrence Hypno Nipple says babies are not exciting. I disagree. Babies are like my favorite animal, and they're super funny.
That's the guy that's supposed to come on Gaytriarchy. I tell him I sent him a message on Minds, but he might not have ever logged into his Minds messages, and so maybe he hasn't seen it.
Well,
okay,
he's listening now, so...
Yeah, but I gotta go. Bye.
See, Terrence just thinks nothing is exciting unless it's a space elevator. Which I think is a very, very high bar. He says, no, I'm not. Maybe you're not the person, then. Well, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Okay, so... Where am I in this stupid book? Oh, okay. They also serve as teenage pregnancy deterrents. Once children learn how demanding and important it is to be a good parent, they become far more inclined to put it off until they are psychologically and financially ready. If we introduced such classes in all our schools by 5th grade at the latest, some girls are getting pregnant by the time they are 12, and repeated them at a more sophisticated level in high school, we would have far fewer fatherless boys and far more nonviolent, responsible, involved fathers. While early education is ideal, there are some excellent programs that encourage unwed teenage fathers to get involved emotionally with their children and support them financially. There are programs that help wife and child batterers understand and control their behavior. Legislation such as the Family Leave Bill would enable fathers to spend more time with their young children. It needs strong and broad support. Surely, the time has come for the mythopoetic wing of the men's movement to take the next step, to move beyond soul-searching and the focus on ancient rituals themselves based on the absence of involved fathers, and to lead active support to workable, concrete solutions to the crisis in fathering. The end.
Yay.
Yeah, I mean, so... What's so ridiculous is that these problems were already caused by the government. You know, if you don't want as many unwed teenage mothers, if you want more responsible whatever, just remove the incentives that support all these things. But no, instead she's going to completely sidestep that question, completely avoid that problem, and just layer on more government. And that's how we get into these problems.
Well, I don't know what the actual evidence is on the ability of sex education, like other things being equal, to actually change people's behavior. Instinctually, I suspect it's actually not that effective, but I don't know, I haven't looked at the numbers. I suspect that getting pregnant at the age of like 13 is probably just a function of being retarded, to be honest.
Or bad parenting.
Well, yeah, but stupid people are less likely to seek out the knowledge to begin with, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it's like, it's a matter of, like, gaining the knowledge through some means, but then also there's this question of, like, just being able to kind of logically figure it out yourself. Like...
Well, I mean, I managed not to do it, somehow, shockingly, yeah.
Well, the other thing is, like... Maybe part of it is people who have like really bad, lazy, non-involved parents, they see that as their model for parenting. So then to them, like having a baby and being a parent is just that, you know, it's just whatever. So whereas if you have like a parent who's really involved and does lots of things, and you have like hardworking parents and everything, you see it as like a higher bar of achievement. You see it as not just like something that they're making up as they go along, you know?
Well, I think you're making it sound like it's kind of premeditated, but I think even among adults in the US, the majority of pregnancies are unplanned. I don't think it's an overwhelming majority, but it's like 50-something%. So that just seems like a symptom of basically bad future orientation or inability to plan ahead. I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably a bigger factor. I mean, it might contribute to like a sort of negligence that they just are not seeing it as a big deal. But
Yeah.
In fact, maybe early sex education might actually have the opposite effect. Maybe it teaches kids to have sex earlier, if you think about it, because like I don't think most kids are interested in like sex and like sexual ed. Like I was laughing my ass off in 5th grade when they were trying to fucking explain to me how sex works. Like I didn't fucking care at that point in time.
well, and it's like it's such an unnatural environment for it. Like school is kind of a terrible environment for learning anything. And then there's this whole like mythos and this whole like flavor to people in school trying to teach sex education to all these children. And like I think that everybody kind of gets on a really instinctual level that it's wrong. It's I don't
Yeah, it's
know.
very unnatural.
It is unnatural. I can kind of see like teaching human biology and some of that, but they really kind of personalize it. The way that they divide up the boys and the girls, right? And they make it this big thing, and they say this is how your body is going to change. And it's like why not just kind of teach it in a more abstract and more kind of neutral way if you're gonna put it in that sort of a setting. It seems like the way it's taught is kind of I don't know, kind of weird and inappropriate, and they're kind of inviting a lot of like the weirdness surrounding it, and then it doesn't really surprise
Yeah,
me that people come away from it with like a weird sense of it.
and that's exactly how I think this is affecting the kids essentially.
And it's like, why can't the parents be trusted to teach these things? It's just like it's just taken for a given that the parents are completely impotent and like can't do anything, so the school has to step
Right,
in.
just let the government be your parents now.
Yeah,
Like
it's just
that's basically the whole motto now.
yeah, it's like breakfast in schools. It's like fucking a like feed your kids breakfast. Like Jesus. Like, like I don't like literally the first thing is you feed them. It's like, oh no, school has to do that. Fuck that. Like it's retarded. All right, so now we have another Nicole Hollander cartoon. Maybe we can see it in the stream, okay? But I'll go ahead and read it. So it's Sylvia, who is just a notorious bitch, and I guess that's the character. And where is it? Where is it? So the TV is saying, during the 70s, women bonded with each other, explored their feelings. Now men are getting a chance to have those things. So now can we have the stuff they have?
The fuck is this? What are they
What's
talking
that even
about?
trying to say?
Wow, that's so funny.
Like, wait, in the 70s, women bonded with each other. They didn't do it before. Like in the 19th century, women didn't have friends or something. What the? Like, what?
Right. So the commentary from the TV is, of course, oh, look at the men's movement, look how it's changing things. It's just like the women's movement of the 70s. And she's saying, oh, well, now that men are having all of the bonding and everything that women had, does that mean we get all of their stuff, right?
Oh, oh, okay. So this comic was so retarded that it took me a while to, and your explanation to understand it. Oh, so it's about, oh yeah, women always had it worse, so they
And that's
feel
such an easy thing to fucking debunk too.
this is such a non sequitur upon non sequitur. I'm pretty sure that friendship existed for, like, I don't know, longer than humanity.
And
It's actually. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say the note on her desk says being fair, right? So this is feminist fairness. Is why don't we just automatically have all of men's stuff, right? Like women are disempowered
Right.
and they don't have stuff, and that's why they had to do all this bonding. Well, now men who have the stuff, they're coming in there and they're taking all of the bonding too, and it's a zero-sum game, right, of emotional attachment apparently. So she's saying,
Yeah.
well, since you're gonna take my idea of having a movement pro-gender, then we should get your stuff now, right? Because that's what it's really about. It's about free shit for women, and that's
I think that
yeah.
might have to do with women being stuck at stage 3 of moral development, and even like the feminists that you like came up with care-based morality even had to admit that women are less concerned with fairness compared to boys.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, I want to find that original article. Because I
TFM
remember,
talked about it a lot.
I remember he did it. Yeah, and the stage. He talks about it a lot, and I remember one time I asked him what the name of the feminist was, so I could like find the two pyramids and compare them, and he didn't have it on hand. He was in one of his
Basically, they
older
stop at
videos.
the TLDR is that basically men stop at stage 6, like which is normal moral development, and women stop at stage 3, I think. And basically, to make women not look like fucking assholes, they had to rename it care-based morality. Otherwise, they looked like giant fucking douchebags.
Yeah, well, and they restructured it to give it the same number of levels too.
Also, notice that there's like a glass with what I suspect is alcohol on the typewriter. First of all, oh,
Wait,
it's
so this stages of moral development thing, there was actually like a metric that was used in psychology or something, and then some element of it had to be changed because it wasn't in accordance with the way adult women behaved, or
What it was there was a commonly accepted model, and this feminist came in and was doing a gendered like analysis of it, and she observed that like it doesn't fit women's moral development. So what she did was she made her own separate hierarchy for women that also has 6 categories, but the argument is that you can just unpackage those 6 categories to make it like the same one, but it's just women stalled out at like a stage like below men, basically.
ah.
See, I am skeptical of it on multiple levels. Like, I'd be skeptical of just the original, like, idea of drafting out the hierarchies of moral development, but I haven't looked into it
Right.
really in depth enough. But of course, I'm skeptical of that because I think that everybody is wrong about everything.
Yeah, I can link you the picture, the original 6 stage of development in your Discord if you want.
Yeah, go ahead. And I think that TFM might have actually featured it on like a more recent video when he dug it out, so maybe I'll do some looking for that. But anyway, this is this retarded fucking comic that I hate. Okay, so now we're on to part 2. I'm actually going to run to the bathroom really quick, so I'm going to be AFK for just a minute here. So, discuss anything. Do we need a topic? Ooh,
well,
Vasil gel. How about Vasil gel?
What's Vasil gel?
What's Vasil gel?
Isn't that? Oh wait, isn't that vagina like gel thing?
No, it's male birth.
Oh no, it's
control.
Vagisil. I'm sorry.
Ha, that's funny.
Ha ha ha.
The only thing I can really remember about that whole affair was people on Twitter poking fun at men because of the relative painlessness, it would seem, of the male birth control, I guess, relative to female birth control. It's just incredibly irritating on such a number of levels, like to imply that the researchers, almost all of whom will have been male, incidentally, who dedicated their lives to, or their careers, to developing female birth control, like to insinuate that they kind of half-arsed it because they just, or they didn't make it painless enough because they just didn't care enough about women, and all the other complications of that whole affair, like in the 60s and 70s, how it was rushed to market by feminists and so on, and like, these are people who actually understand the complexities of the issue, like these researchers, as opposed to the average person who's complaining about this, who, I mean, most of them probably would struggle to tell you how the fucking gears on a bicycle work, let alone how anything in their birth control works.
It sounds
Yeah.
a lot like a child's relationship, like a spoiled child's relationship to their parents, and not knowing how hard it is to provide for them, and they usually just make these like solipsistic assumptions about, oh yeah, you couldn't do that because you didn't care about me. You didn't make it 100% perfect.
Yeah, it's like lacking the theory of mind to understand that people have, that other people's might have other things going on, basically, than just constantly tending to you. Yeah.
Alright, I'm back now. So, let's continue with our friend Kathleen Carlin with the men's movement of choice. I work in an organization created to stop men from battering women. While it is a place where men work together in groups to stop their own and others' battering, the organization's primary mission is to end male violence against women. This mission, simple as it sounds, was the object of some debate during the early years of our organization. Why should the goal be to eliminate violence against women rather than to help the batterers, since that is the actual work that we do? After all, the argument went, if you help men stop battering, you're helping the victims. I'm not sure why I was surprised at the intense resistance to putting victims' safety first. I know that to put women's interests ahead of men's so fundamentally violates the status quo that we all react with terror and confusion at the thought. Women know that to put women's interests ahead of men's makes women a more prominent target for men's rage. We, as women, feel safer with what Martin de Fresnay calls the trickle-down model for ending violence. We would prefer to treat the symptoms of that violence and hope for the best than to call attention to the deeply embedded ideology of male supremacy that sanctions it.
Funny how the implication is that women are the primary victims and men are the primary aggressors.
Yep, women are the primary victims of war. She's right out the gate with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think women who actually think that should just get drafted, and then we should send them to the front lines, and then they can be an example for what other women will think.
I actually remember seeing an article about how Rwanda's population is now 70% female, for obvious reasons, and women are the primary victims of this.
Yeah, no, that was something I brought up in a super old video I did, which female leaders suck about as much as male ones, because that was this big thing they were trying to make us think of. It's like, oh, well, look at Rwanda, where all the women are leaders now, and it's like, yeah, it took a genocide, literally all the men are dead, and and oh, look, how empowering for women that was, now they had to step up because nobody else was there to do it.
And even then, they still had tons of foreign aid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, this might be the worst start to any of these essays. Just this notion that putting the care and concern for women first is so against the status quo. She says that she's, sitting on her obviously publicly funded, organization created to prevent violence against the people who have the least violence directed at them. Absolutely silly. And then even...
In fact, if we count...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that,
okay, well...
this big debate that she's framing, right, is the debate between having the ideological goal of your organization being to stop male violence against women, or having your fundamental goal be to help people not do that because you're helping them for the purpose of having them not batter women, right? It's the same thing either way, right? She's not really weighing it against treating men as an end in themselves, of thinking that people in this situation are suffering in some way that they're worthy of help. That's not even on the radar.
Right. And also, in terms of non-reciprocal violence, I believe it's 70% of the woman doing the violence, actually.
Yeah, and those are the conflict tactics scale ones, which are not Duluth model, and therefore they don't count, because you have to use the Duluth model. Otherwise, it's male supremacist garbage.
Statistics are oppressive, yo.
Yeah, it's because logic is phallocentric. Logic is a penis penetrating the darkness of knowledge. Okay? Syllogisms are rape. Syllogisms are a gang rape. Syllogisms are the two premises raping the conclusion. This is just feminist epistemology 101.
It has the word jism at the end of it.
There we go. And that's how it always ends. That's how it always ends. And nobody asks, did the conclusion have a jism? So on that note...
What the fuck? Toto, did you just, ejaculate or something?
No, I'm just... fucking... No. That came out wrong. Okay, I'm sighing as a form of stress. Relief.
Yeah, it turns out there's a lot of ways to relieve stress.
I'm spilling my spaghetti at the moment.
your audio broke up, so it came out as I'm just fucking.
Jesus Christ. No, that's not what I mean.
All right, so back onto domestic violence. The smooth transition there. Ooh, this is great. She's about to bash on a straw man of like supply side economics. Just as trickle down economics is a strategy designed ultimately to keep money and control of it just where it is, so the strategies we use to challenge male violence against women, which enforces and maintains male supremacy, won't be effective without dismantling male supremacy and the oppression of women. As long as men's relationships with others are held in place by the abuse of power and control, masculinity itself will of necessity be a hollow identity, a demon haunting men rather than the fulfillment of humanness.
Yeah, sounds like some paranoid conspiracy theories. Everything is like, just because something is happening or you perceive something is happening doesn't mean that it was planned by someone with malicious intent.
I'd also really like to see her. I really like to see her standard of what a good man is then, and see if it actually just benefits her.
Well, that goes without saying, right? And of course,
right. But I think it makes it more obvious and like more like apparent to people that these people are just fucking solipsistic cunts.
And here we're 1 degree away from communism, right? When people are bashing this, they're saying, oh well, when you let people have power and wealth at the top, it's just a myth that they hire people, right? It's just a myth that that they build businesses and that they make investment and that this leads to the growth of capital and gives more opportunities to people. No. That's just made up. That's just made up because it's designed as an excuse to justify me not literally robbing them and taking all of their money.
Yep.
But I'm trying to think that this is such a weird comparison. So the idea is that violence trickles down, right? So the idea is at the top you have men with all this power, and just like capitalism, this is male supremacy, and then they're beating up the women. Does she not believe then that women who are acted upon in this way are then also sometimes violent, like towards their children, right? Down the chain. Or it seems like because she doesn't believe in quote-unquote trickle-down economics, she doesn't think that this dynamic occurs either. Like, she thinks that... It's kind of weird because she's sort of invoking the structure of this while she's also rejecting the theory. And it's a very
maybe
strange
she just
comparison.
I think there's like a moment where like their brains turn off when it comes to like, oh, okay, now we have to be consistent, and now we have to say that women might actually abuse children now.
I don't even think her brain went there. I think she's just a communist and she wanted an excuse to bash trickle-down economics and she thought this was clever. That's what I think is happening. But we'll see.
I don't know. I think their frontal lobes fucking to stop working for a second. Like that's what it feels like it happens. What happens when I just argue with feminists? This is like...
Yeah, it's kind of like if you like put a ball in their face, right? And like then they can't see anything around it, and like I don't know, it's very like one tracky. Like they can't, like they'll just double think out of anything, and any of the other premises needed for an argument. Okay, let's see where she goes.
Or they'll just forget.
The mythopoetic men's movement, if it has done nothing else, has thrown into public discourse a picture of the disease among men with masculinity. No, she put a hyphen in disease. D-I-S hyphen. Oh, dis-ease. Oh, okay, sorry. So she says, the mythopoetics men's movement, if it has done nothing else, has thrown into public discourse a picture of the dis-ease among men with masculinity. Isn't unease a word?
Unease, yeah.
What the fuck? God, fucking... Now I'm pissed.
But that's... You know what that is? That's... She's being clever there. She's doing a cleverness,
Oh, yeah, because it's like a disease also. Uh-huh. Well done, Miss Carlin. Well done, Miss Kathleen Carlin. At least, a dis-ease among men with masculinity. at least among those who have the privilege to be self-aware and to talk about it and bring it into mass culture. The spokesmen for this movement have captured the sense of this dis-ease. They have given it voice and a prescription for a catharsis of sensory relief, but they make no demands for a change in the underlying structures causing their malaise. As a member of the class of people designated to be subordinate in a male supremacist society, I watch with curiosity and apprehension as these men approach the search for the true masculine as something denied them. I would like to say something about how that makes me nervous. When speaking about male dominance and the oppression of women, it is not only tempting, it's easy to see men as victims too. In patriarchy, men have had to live as members of a group engaged in upholding a structure of dominance, whether any individual chose that or not. The same social order that organized itself around men owning women and children had to order men into hierarchies as well.
What?
These dominance, yeah, she's getting close to self-awareness. She might figure it out. You know, she needs to put a little bit of language about, you know, women and children as property, but I think she's almost got it. She's almost caught on to the fact that like men are forced into their gender roles also.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
she's
the thing
learning.
about owning. What the fuck was that? When was like is she talking about slavery, or is it like, you know, feminist definition of, you know, property?
No, it's whenever you have coverture, she considers that to be ownership, and then it's about this basically equivocation based myth, right? Where they say, well, because there was some form of coverture, then, you know, therefore the man owned his wife the same way he owned a shovel or a hoe. You get it?
I get it. I see what you did there.
Okay. These dominant-subordinate relationships among men have been based on class, race, religion, sexual orientation, or other factors. Therefore, most men have lived in positions of subordination to other men, often enforced by violence. And so, one can say, some men are victimized not by women, as the right-wing men's movement says, but by other men. One can use this logic to justify focusing on defining and reworking those dominant-subordinate relationships between men, such as the Mythopoetics focus on father-son relations and male bonding.
Right-wing men's movement?
Yeah, I'm not sure that the Mythopoetic movement is distinctly right-wing. It seems very, very politically removed. It seems very nonpartisan to me. I suppose, you know, maybe they're a little bit more... I mean, in general, they're probably going to be more traditional and conservative-minded, but I don't
think the reason why she's putting this as right-wing is simply just to get more allies to fight this movement, like, from the left. Because, oh no, like, they're right-wingers, they're evil conservatives, we have to get rid of them, they're icky.
Yeah. Well, and I think she wants to package it into her overall worldview. And I think for her, she needs, like, for example, the employer-employee relationship. She needs that to be a situation of dominance, right? And she needs that to be, like, oppression. So I think that's kind of what she's getting at. Is she's going to say that this mythopoetic movement is right-wing, and therefore it justifies traditional dominant relations, and it justifies them in the form of economics and in the family. Like, I think that's kind of the angle she's working at. But of course, the idea that you have hierarchy based on your investment, or based on your knowledge, or based on, you know, your commitment to something, you know, like we're all part of hierarchies all the time, and we're constantly part of ones that we're on top of and also not on top of, and you'd never want to be at the top of absolutely everything. Like, it wouldn't... Like there's a lot to be gained from... Fun. Yeah, well, that's the thing, is that you... Like if you want to, like, learn skills or, like, gain knowledge, you know, you are subordinate to a teacher, or subordinate to a manager, an employer, and, like, in that role, you get to learn skills and develop as a person. And if you come into it with, like, this resentment towards, like, oh, I'm less than, I'm othered, because I'm not automatically the person at the top of the hierarchy, you know, you're not going to make a good employee, obviously, and you're probably not going to learn much.
Yep.
Like imagine, like, how would you have any form of learning without hierarchy?
But hierarchy bad.
You can't even make a suggestion for something, for an improvement, without hierarchy. Like her like little essay here opened with a comparison of hierarchy, right? Where she says, here's my organization with this as its goal versus what people were saying should be its goal instead. We had a debate about which one is better, right? And she's making the case that there's a hierarchy where the one that she's arguing for is better, right?
Right. So I think it also goes back into like communist thought as well, because they believe that capitalism is hierarchy and it's oppressive.
Well,
I mean, it is sort of a hierarchy, but like you also have to go on.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, because they had believe in this myth that you can have such a thing as no hierarchies, and it doesn't work.
Yeah,
Like-
the hierarchy there is just the government the government and the people in the communist state, and then the government can just do whatever the fuck they want, because now you have no like way of stopping them now, because you have no guns, you have nothing to stop them. You're basically just like a beta boy pussy to the fucking state.
Well, and they usually defer to democracy, to democratic processes, for decision making. But once you have that, you're going to create a hierarchy between people in the majority versus people in the minority. Like, hierarchies are just naturally occurring phenomena. There's no way to get around them. Like, if you look at the text on this page, I could replace every single word with potato. And now I could argue, well, since you don't believe in hierarchy, this version of your essay where it just says potato, 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 instead of the particular words that you chose, we can't have a hierarchy. So my version of your essay where it's just potato ad nauseum is superior, or sorry, equal, perfectly equal to the one where you've carefully chosen words like dis-ease to be clever.
Yeah.
You can't write an essay without validating the concept of hierarchy. You can't eat breakfast without validating the concept of hierarchy. Anyway, let's see if maybe she'll, I don't know, but she was so close, right? I know that feminists always say patriarchy hurts men too, but like, I felt like she was so close to getting it, but she has to dress it up in this bullshit language, and now she's gonna take us somewhere. She's gonna take us somewhere. Let's see where we go. A basic problem with this approach, and with the mythopoetic men's movement as a whole, is that it moves within the aura of that guiding principle of patriarchy, that male nature characterizes full humanity, that men are central, the core around which all others revolve. Therefore, men getting together with men to struggle with feelings, identity, and relationship seems substantial, paramount, imminently worthwhile. Within this worldview, the problems and pain of women are infinitely less interesting, less compelling, less urgent than those of men. Okay, so since she used the word centrality, let's see if this is let's do a quick projection test. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick gender flip here. A basic problem with this feminist approach, with the feminist women's movement as a whole, is that it moves within the aura of that guiding principle of gynocentrism, that female nature characterizes full humanity, that women are central, the core around which all others revolve. Therefore, women getting together with other women to struggle with feelings, identity, and relationships seems substantial, paramount, imminently worthwhile. Within this worldview, the problems and pain of men are infinitely less interesting, less compelling, less urgent than those of women.
Bravo.
I mean, is that not literally an exact inversion of reality, what she's saying here?
It really is.
Because how could she possibly argue that the overwhelming momentum of society is in favor of men's issues when, like she's speaking from the perspective of working for a domestic violence shelter, despite the fact that men experience more violence.
Like, you can just it's easy. You can just like make a chart, like put a line down the middle and like list the men's issues on one side and the female issues on the other side, and it's not even a fucking contest usually. Like once you actually like get like sound them out, or like sound out what problems men are facing in comparison to women, it's not even a fucking comparison. Like women's issues are a joke.
Yeah, and then put it into the context of the question. So, are the problems and pain of men or women considered like less interesting, compelling, or urgent than those of the other? Like which one is considered less important? And look at the amount of funding and attention given to women versus men.
Yeah,
And
the
this
only
was true
time
in the
that
90s. This was true at the time of writing this, too. She really has no excuse.
the only time where like maybe it could be at least somewhat close to 50-50, or at least like what maybe with women having it worse is maybe in like an Islamic country, but even then, like I still think that it's probably over exaggerated what women have to go through there.
Yeah, well, they're much more sensitive to it, right? And that's kind of a weapon, is to be able to really advocate very strongly, right? If you're very, very good at advocacy, you're probably exaggerating, because that's kind of the nature of it.
Like they'll talk about like say female circumcision over there. Oh, how it's so bad, but then like there's multiple forms of female circumcision, and most forms of female circumcision aren't even as bad as male circumcision. Feminists just point to type 4 and say, oh, that's all female circumcision is. That is just cutting off the clit completely, even though that's the rarest form. And meanwhile, you're completely ignoring the millions of baby boys that get circumcised in Islam, which is like 90% of the time worse than what the females go through.
And the funny thing too is, if you make this argument to someone, I've actually never seen anybody seriously try to combat those claims. The overwhelming majority of the time, people have just accepted, without looking into it at all, that women have it so much worse. And if you even bring up that there's multiple different types, that's usually like deeper knowledge than they even have.
Yeah, like I didn't even know that until like recently. Mm-hmm. And like I actually had trying to explain that to someone, and it was like almost mind-boggling to them that they didn't even know this.
See,
like,
but it's
no
also,
one fucking talks about it.
The thing is, so if you think about it, it's kind of like of course there's different kinds, right? Like there couldn't not be. Anyway.
Right.
She continues, in patriarchy, men are located in such a way as to have virtually total and exclusive access to the entire range of resources available within society, resulting in what is operationally a male homosocial world, where men are attached to, stimulated by, and interested in other men, even though that attraction may be characterized by fear and competition. In such a world, itself characterized by territoriality, dominance, resource acquisition, and loyalty, men can satisfy their needs from other men. In this world, women become resources that men can use to further their own eminence. Women are excluded not because they are competitors, but because they are deemed irrelevant. Yeah, this sounds like the homo state. What's the problem here? But no, I mean seriously, this notion of men have exclusive access to the entire range of resources available. It sounds a little bit more like, no. Although, I do agree.
I can't go to a female domestic shelter.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing.
If I'm being beat up.
That's the thing is, once one gender has access to all of these resources, oh, you mean it might resolve in something which is operationally a female homosocial world, where female are attracted to and stimulated by and interested in other females and all their own issues and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's creepy how well you can just flip this, and it seems like she couldn't not know. It seems like she couldn't not know. An earlier focus of this men's movement encouraged men to develop their feminine side by cultivating such qualities as emotionality, gentleness, and nurturing. Yet the attribution of these basic human characteristics as female was an arbitrary 19th century construction designed to emphasize women's difference from and inferiority to men. When a man espouses this view, I hear this: I think I can actually override my devaluing of women sufficiently to appropriate those feminine qualities that will make me a more complete person. I hear this as an attempt to appropriate some exotic artifact that will enhance and enlarge upon his image of himself. And, as a woman, I begin to feel like the witch doctor's mask hanging on his wall.
Fuck's sake, she, it's not, she should probably, stop, taking this super female vitality or whatever the feminist equivalent of Alex Jones's supplements are, because holy shit, I wonder
Question.
if she's doing too much drugs or not enough, because whatever is causing her mental state to be this bad, she should do something to change it.
It sounds like she's like, is this woman like a rad femme or a lesbian?
Let me check the end of it here. Kathleen
Well, like
Carlin
Clark,
grew up
then.
in Nebraska, an activist in the battered women's movement. She directed a shelter for battered women for 6 years and speaks and writes on issues of violence toward women, men who batter, and feminism. She is a founding board member and former chair of the National Women Abuse Prevention Center. Since 1985, she has been executive director of Men Stopping Violence. This essay is adapted from a talk presented at the Men and Masculinity Conference in 1990. Soon after that, she joined a women's trek that climbed Mount Kenya. She lives in Atlanta with Jack. Together, they are parents of 2 wonderful, competent, self-possessed young women, Suzanne and Elizabeth. So not a lesbian.
Great, I think.
Yeah, not a lesbian.
Okay.
She's very, what a bland bio. What a bland bio.
Yeah, she tried to usually when it comes to lesbians is that like they completely fail to view men in the respect because they view that femininity as oppression usually, especially with the rad femme crown. And I mean, I guess it makes sense for them to, if they think that femininity is slavery because women had less rights and because they, or less, less like, I mean, women had human rights back then, but they didn't have like as like NITO rights, like saying the right to vote because they weren't drafted. I guess you could use the argument that maybe because women's issues are always prioritized, they thought that was slavery, and that because they're so used to getting whatever they want, they view anything that's being taken away from them as, I don't know.
Well, what she's saying here is that when men are like getting in touch with their feminine side, she has a problem with the fact that those attributes are coded as female, because the idea is that it's basically men like essentially culturally appropriating in a way, but basically that the feminine aspect doesn't become like another half. It just becomes like a little miniature subset, and that ultimately the man is doing it just to embetter himself as a man.
What I'm trying to say is that they're basically trying to say that, oh, it's okay to appropriate masculinity, though. Because masculinity is freedom and femininity is slavery.
See, but that's kind of an interesting difference, though, because, like, it seems like in the feminist worldview, they don't view, like, the masculine part that they're trying to take as like a little mini subset of something, right? They're not like telling women like, oh, mostly be women, but kind of amp it up a little bit, kind of butch it up a little bit, right? It's not like a little splash that they add to their feminine persona. It's everything that they want. They want to be men. They want to 100% do what men do and be men and have all the things that men have. So
but I think that's mainly because a lot of these people are lesbians. They're autistic lesbians, and they're jealous that the Chad straight man is getting all the women. And so basically, they want to adopt masculinity for women, so they can turn into lesbians or something. Like this is a really crazy worldview. Basically, these lesbians think that even fucking like being straight is like brainwashed into women. That women are naturally inclined to be attracted to other women.
I think it's like with many of them, they kind of adopt a masculine presentation style because they view feminine gender norms and beauty norms as part of patriarchal oppression, like as you were saying. But I don't think they actually have male or male typical personalities truly. In fact, most of them seem to be the most hysterical and the most histrionic kind of feminists. Like, I think it's really more an issue of outward presentation style than anything else, because women who actually do have male brains and have masculine personality attributes, I was talking about this in voice chat the other day, I think those are the kind of people who are probably the least likely of any group of women to identify with feminists. You know, so you know, like Camille Paglia, I think she actually does essentially have a male brain. I mean, she says that herself, but like I actually buy it with her, and that's why she kind of identifies more with men.
Yeah,
I
she walks
suppose,
the
but then you can
walk.
look at, but then you can look at like people like Magdalene Burns, and she's like extremely masculine looking.
Yeah, but would you think that her way of being about herself is very masculine? Like her brain
Right,
is
that's
actually masculine. I
what
think
I
she's
meant.
probably the
Like,
hyper feminine.
how much of it is just the way they present themselves, but inwardly they're just completely histrionic, and yeah.
I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, she is kind of a pussy when it comes to like, say, like I think she thinks that like, oh, like women are like so fragile that like you
Right,
can
and
get
that-
like raped
and that-
like if you go down a street or something, even though statistically women are less likely to be victims of violence in almost all categories except for rape. And then
And
you can
that-
also, sorry, go ahead.
And that mentality, that attitude, sure as fuck isn't what you would call masculine, is it?
Yeah, I think she's just fucking, I don't know. I guess there may be like a middle ground, but I don't know. I just think that a lot of the lesbians in the feminist sphere really think that and try to make straight women like that, into lesbians.
I'm just trying to think of what this author realistically wants, because I can imagine that if framed in the right way, she's totally happy with men doing all of the things and the behaviors she's described. She just doesn't like the way it's framed. She just doesn't like the idea that these characteristics are considered feminine. And I wonder if someone were to say, like, women tend to be better at these things. If she
He is
doesn't
the
issue them.
masculine. He is the masculine approach to getting around that issue. Get over it, basically.
Yeah. See, but this is the problem. This is just reinforcing these structures of dominance and subordination. You literally just told Rosa Parks to give up her seat. That's what you just did. Okay, so let's see where she goes with this. Surely one reason for the enthusiasm welcoming the current men's movement must be that its ideology not only gives men permission to abandon the attempts to develop their feminine sides, but more than that offers an ideology actually incorporating the irrelevancy of women. What a relief it must be to be able to think about, play with, and abound in masculinity, without ever having to bother with the fact that its very existence relies solely on the construction of that to which it is opposed. The other, the shadow. Let me get to the next page here. Yeah, now we're getting into the kind of feminist, essentialist sort of approach to thing where you're othering, right? Supposed to the other, the shadow, the inferior, to be warded off, to be better than and superior to. This is only a recycled version of imperialism, man standing above and apart from nature, who in solitude controls and dominates it while pursuing some ancient impulse to be rejoined with it. Women exist only to mirror back the centrality of men.
Please note that she was the one who said that women are inferior to men, so I guess... Well, even the broken clock is right twice a day.
Well, so she must be against the notions of femininity and masculinity. She's for the androgynous state, right? Where both men and women are both equally masculine and feminine, and there's no more distinction because she's a communist,
That's
right?
literally
No more
impossible.
hierarchy. No more hierarchy. A penis and a
Like,
vagina
that's
is a
literally
hierarchy.
Wait, I have a point. Riddle me this. If women are not inferior to men and women have been historically oppressed by men through all the history everywhere, how is it possible that someone who is not superior is oppressing someone who is not inferior, even though they are equal numbers, and it's like everywhere throughout all history.
Well, I think
Yeah,
it's
well-
just that women have been coddled to the point of being incompetent.
This is like Karen Strawn's objection. Like she made this point that the feminist narrative about the historical oppression of women, you can't take it seriously unless you do believe that women are inferior. Like all of that 100,000 or so years or whatever of human evolution, and it was only in the last, like, I guess 150 years that they broke free of their shackles.
Also, remember earlier in this text, she talked about what was the term, like overcompensating masculinity. It was named differently, but when men without father figure, they behave in they don't know how to be men, so they just overcompensate and act like fucking dickheads. Well, isn't she and her ilk acting like in the same way towards femininity? They don't know how to be a female, so they overcompensate. They have this massive inferiority complex, so they have to overcompensate and act the way they think men act, even though men don't. So they just think that being bitchy is the same as being liberated and strong woman or something.
Yeah, the bossy question, right? If you call a little girl bossy, well, she was just doing what all the boys do. There's nothing significantly different about it, which is very silly. But yeah. So, I was just gonna mention. It reminds me of this. It was a stand-up comic who joked, "Oh, women can do anything men can do. Okay, oppress a whole gender then."
Yeah. But basically, I think like what if she actually wants that, I hope she knows that that's literally biologically impossible. Like, there's biological like differences between the sexes, so you can't have like this whole androgynous fucking society. Like, oh, everyone's equally masculine and feminine. That's not gonna be a fucking thing. Like, there's different hormones that like facilitate different behaviors between the sexes. Like, what are you trying to do? Are we just gonna like chop off everyone's genitalia and just make them like all fucking androgynous fucking freaks or something?
No, the reason that men have on average more upper body strength is because as little boys they were given trucks to play with and the girls were given dolls. And if you
it's
disagree,
totally not because they have balls.
If you disagree, then you're an essentialist bigot and you are othering women, okay?
I have a solution. Just make Barbie dolls out of lead. So, girls, develop strong muscles.
Oh, there we go. Put a little calcium in it too. Because they're
But yeah, if we actually did that, had an androgynous society would collapse because men do everything. Like, so, fucking androgynous society.
Well, the next paragraph is her solution. So let's see what she's got for us. Now that she's so clearly defined the problem.
Is it of the final variety?
Let's see how final it is. The solution is neither for men to develop their feminine sides, nor to fetishize the masculine with the calling forth of the inner wild man. The solution is to deconstruct a masculinity that is founded on not being a woman, on woman hating.
So be a good utility. Shut up.
There we have it. The solution is to deconstruct masculinity, but that's the thing. So say we can't say let's develop our feminine side. No, just quietly disuse, quietly stop using this thing. Oh, but when it comes to masculinity, this shit needs to be deconstructed, right? Why not phrase it the other way? Why not say, hey, let's stop talking about masculinity, but when it comes to femininity, this shit's getting overhauled. This shit's getting deconstructed. Which,
well, I think there are aspects of femininity or of the female gender role that actually could do with being deconstructed, I guess, or whatever the correct word would be. I think I'm basically in agreement with Toto about this.
Well, and that's the thing is when people bring up toxic masculinity, like, I'm in the camp that says, not necessarily that's totally man-hating. I'm in the camp that says, okay, we have to bring this up and also talk about toxic femininity. Put it all on the table.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people, they don't like that, right? They see that as a very, very toxic way of going about everything. You know, they say, why can't we all
toxic
just
femininity.
why can't we just
Toxic
kumbaya?
It's more just like the wording, I think. Like, what I would say probably is just bad male typical behavior and bad female typical behavior, because that tends to not upset people as much, I guess. I think it's just the word toxic that people don't like.
Well, and how could anyone
toxic
disagree?
femininity.
How could anyone disagree? Like when you're saying, are there not things that are more commonly done by men versus women that are bad, right? Like you could totally package it in a way that they totally agree. Yes, there are generally bad things that are disproportionately perpetrated by each gender.
Right, like toxic
Yeah.
femininity is beating the shit out of your kids.
Basically, yeah. And
That's not
divorce
necessarily
rate.
a male thing.
Another example would just be sort of the total lack of resilience and the fetishization of victimhood. Like,
The
I remember,
damseling.
yeah. So, like, this is, there was, like, some controversy about male celebrities in South Korea. Like, I think I mentioned this to Spacepan. The way that female fans were interacting with them, like, taking photos with them and, like, just randomly kissing them on the cheek, you know, things that male fans would go to jail for, and this kind of thing. But
Yep.
the thing is that, and by the way, I'm not excusing that behavior at all. You know, it is inappropriate, etc., etc. But it's like, I bet the day after it happened, you know, he was the guy that this happened to, for instance. Like, I saw the video. You could tell he was kind of annoyed, but I bet the next day he wasn't thinking about it. It didn't ruin his day, or any time after that. He didn't have a full-blown fucking spaz attack, or start crying rape, and so on, which is what many women would do in this situation, because they are instinctually more sexually cautious. And the default reaction of most people when you point this out, I would guess, because I've never really talked to anyone else about it like a normie, but I imagine what most people would say is, oh, don't judge it, you know, don't judge them, don't hold them to male standards, it's just different, it's just... No, it's not just different, okay? It's worse. It is a worse way to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, being less resilient, being more vulnerable, being more fragile. You know, and his rape advocates obviously are not helping. You know, I call them rape farmers. You know, they're cultivating rape. They're making those rape crops bigger and bolder, right, than they would be otherwise.
And the thing is that you can even frame that argument, you know, instead of making it about how females are inferior in some way. Like, I've thought about this before. You could frame it in a way that would be palatable to normies, by basically making it about how women are essentially victimized by their emotions, by their evolved tendencies. You could sort of frame it in terms of, like, their health, women's health and well-being, and that might get people on board with the transhumanism genetic engineering train, if you can sort of center women's victimhood. Yeah.
You also have to take into consideration how women are raised as children. For example, like raising, like, I'm not saying that this is like the end all be all solution, but I do think that a lot of this, like, fucking, like, women just spurging out over, like, being kissed on the cheek is kind of like basic. They've never been toughened up before. Basically, like, there's a toughening up process between, like,
that kind of thing, even if it was somebody I really didn't like, I don't know about you, having that level of reaction, though, is just unimaginable to me. Like, I would just be kind of annoyed, and that's it.
Yeah, I think it's because they're coddled too much. Like, not to say that, like, women are... Okay, I think that if we're going to go with the standard that a lot of behaviors in adulthood are kind of, like, attributed to what happened to them during as a child, I suppose. I think a lot of what women really go through, act like, or how they act like in society, is due to them being coddled as children. And I think this is also why they don't get past stage 3 of moral development. It's because they're coddled to the point where they don't have the necessary life experiences to have a proper morality, or at least like, or to even handle like the most basic amounts of stress. Now, I'm not going to say that there's no biology within that factors into it either, but I do believe that women can fucking like handle a kiss on the goddamn cheek. Like, I'm sorry, that just sounds fucking
Well, but the
obvious
biggest
to
thing
me.
is they used to, right? Like people used to be a lot less hysterical about it, and what changed? What changed was a lot of this like rape activism and this consciousness raising. You know, that made this whole hysterical culture surrounding it. Like Me
I
Too is a
saw
very modern phenomenon, and I think that if you showed women of the past a lot of these complaints, they'd kind of laugh at it and say that these women are being just massive pussies.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I saw an article in Quillette recently. It was this woman who sounded like she had kind of a middle class background, uh, went to an all girls Christian school, etc., etc., and then fresh out of school, she started working in a kitchen, um, with like a bunch of working class men, and she said that like they were always sort of making crude jokes or like that kind of sexual banter. And she said that initially she was threatened by it, but then she started like cracking jokes back towards them, and it was like a mutual thing, and there was this equilibrium, and it was just funny. It was became part of the dynamic of working there. And it's the kind of it's the kind of thing that Shakespeare is full of, these kinds of interactions between the sexes. And she's like a literature professor, so she was pointing at that out, like the prevalence of these sorts of themes in old literature. So there is a sense in which we are problematizing or pathologizing things which indeed we would have just once accepted as part of life and wouldn't have caused us any real problems at all.
By the
Yeah,
way, there's a new comment in the chat. Hypatia says, "This is totally wrong. You guys don't know what you're talking about."
yeah. Well, I appreciate the input. If you want to like give a like be more specific, because obviously there's not really anything anyone can say in response to that, because we have no idea what your actual argument is. But
But Derek, were you going to say something to what I said?
oh yeah, I was just gonna say it's like eating your vegetables. Like if you puke the first time and then every single time you try to eat vegetables you puke every single time, you never realize that you could just ingest the vegetables and then gain from it. And I think that's what a lot of this like victimhood narrative is cultivating. Is it's saying always vomit and look at how often we have to vomit. We're so oppressed, and it's like you could just try digesting it and becoming stronger for it.
I saw something recently. I think Janice Fiamengo retweeted it. It was a woman I think it was in London. I can't remember. But anyway, she contacted the police, or like she started filming, talking about how psychologically destabilized she is, like moments after it happened, because a man on a construction site looked at her.
Well, yeah, that's why they call it eye rape. That's why they call it the male gaze. And they don't mean the
Yeah.
homosexuals, they mean the male gaze with a hard
There are
Z.
no, yeah, it's just like there are no words,
So
Eye rape is
I was just gonna say we're gonna really like the next bit of it here. So this is a big parenthetical. Half of this paragraph is in parentheses. By women hating, I do not mean the Hustler magazine kind. I mean simply the attitude that male nature is held to be expressive of full humanity. And when men say to me, that's not women hating, I say, I rest my case.
Yeah, checkmate, atheist.
And everybody clapped.
Yeah, and the boy's name was Albert Einstein.
It's just like this argument that's going on in feminist circles for the past like several years, where they say the fact that anybody would be an anti-feminist proves that we need feminism.
Replace the word feminism with, for example, fascism is just as stupid. So.
Okay, but
The fact that
I kind of
people are-
unironically agree with that. Like, if anti-fascists are what come to exist in a democratic society, then
Yeah,
fascism starts to look more
we need
appealing
more
by
fascism.
comparison.
Solution to everything. But by the way, great quote to take out of context.
I'll own it. I am the prom queen of the alt-right. So there. I pimp slapped I pimp slapped Claire Kahn, stole her tiara, and now I'm gonna take all her boyfriends too. Watch out.
I almost felt bad for her because we just basically her fucking comment section just got reamed and destroyed by like 15 people just telling her that she's a dumb bitch.
No, she likes it. She likes it. That's the reason she doesn't want to have a debate with me, is because I'm too nice. I'm not gonna like really verbally dominate her the way that she likes. She likes to have the kind of debate where she really gets her hair pulled. You know, that's kind of her jam. If you listen to her streams, that's kind of what happens. But
okay,
I say this with the utmost respect, though. I do love her. She's very thoughtful and very interesting, and she is fairly intelligent. She has a lot of very interesting insights and really interesting things to say. But she's also crazy. So, you know, pros and cons.
Yeah, everyone's a retard on some subject.
I think Richard Spencer would be the most based on space elevators. Maybe, Terrence. We can dream. I was watching like a whole like documentary thing about space elevators because I didn't really know anything about it, and just the concept of building one and then the tether snapping and it like whipping around the Earth and causing like massive like issues or whatever. It's like insane.
Yeah. This is irrelevant, but now that you've mentioned Richard Spencer, I have to mention this. Like, I just remembered his debate with Sargoy of Mossad, and like, at some point, Richard was basically saying something to the effect to Sargon, something like, you know, your arguments are very paint by numbers. Like, I can predict almost line by line everything that's gonna come out of your mouth. And Sargon, in response to this, said, I'm not kidding, right? He said, okay, well, guess what color I'm thinking of right now? Like, that is actually what he said.
But
I think that's a cute response. That's okay.
You don't think it's kind of cringe?
I think it's being, obtuse, but deliberately obtuse. Obviously, he knew what his opposition was talking about, really. So, because to tell me what color I'm thinking of is not actually an argument that he would use in the debate, because it's not even an argument. Period. It's a question.
Yeah, the way Spencer says Sargon of Akkad in his is like semi-gay accent is kind of funny. Sargon of Akkad. Yeah.
Man, if I was Richard Spencer in that debate, I would say, are you thinking of like 1/4 black? Because Sargon said he was like 1/4 black.
No, that was he was very obviously lying.
Yeah, I think that debunked. He was like, I have a black grandfather, but he's like Greek. But
well, his parents appeared in one of his videos, and they're both like Snow White, like completely unambiguously. I don't know what in the hell made him think that was a good idea.
No, his grandfather was a white nigger.
Yeah, that's probably true, to be honest.
The PC term is snow nigger. Okay.
Your channel is definitely getting banned now.
Just whatever. So you know. No, I would just get a strike for this for saying a naughty word, for saying the Voldemort word.
Yeah, it is really silly, like the taboo surrounding that word, isn't it?
It is, and I maintain all black people have a moral duty to give out N-word passes like they're Oprah. Like, there needs to be one under every single chair, and then everybody gets a golden ticket N-word pass, and then we make a day of it.
But by the way, have you heard this remixed version of the this one?
This ought to be good.
There we go. I mean, I'm not. There we go. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I'm
Okay, enough of that. That's a banger, though.
Oh, the best part stuff now.
I mean, I'm not.
Okay, it's too long.
I mean, I'm not. This is what I mean about the chat. I just can't be bothered to deal with this. It's really annoying. You are acting like a bunch of niggas. You act like white niggas. I mean, I'm just not in the mood to deal with this kind of disrespect. And I know it sounds like, oh my god, he's demanding respect. But yeah, to be honest with you, do you not think that, like, we should have a level of decorum in interpersonal interaction? I'm not saying trolling. I know it's not trolling, but it's not like something I need to deal with if I don't want to have to deal with it. Upper class twat, dude, I'm not a you guys understand that I am a person. And look, yeah, look, sorry, I hate to do. Look, you carry on. You understand I'm a white nigga, don't you? Maybe you're just acting like a nigga. And you consider even white people act like
Well, I won't play the whole thing. You get the idea.
Yeah, no, that was way too much of that. It's funny,
It's called,
funny, but literally 30 seconds is
Holy
fine.
shit.
Like that was like 5 fucking minutes. Okay.
Yeah, I was getting concerned.
It was great though.
It's called Smug Chuckling Intensifies by Chili Bite.
It is a banger. It is a banger. I wish that kind of shit would play at clubs because it would be funny.
Stop acting like a bunch of white niggers.
I agree, though. Like, I honestly don't think he was wrong. It's just, like, I get that optics-wise it's not good because people are stupid, but that's not that doesn't mean he's wrong.
Yeah, the people who were in his chat at the time, I imagine that they were, yeah.
No, exactly. And it's just like, like when people, they go in and they do, like, a 3D chess analysis of his political campaign, and it's like, okay, but why do we take it as a given that people are too stupid to understand any of his points? Like, that's the more fundamental issue, not that Sargon's not playing the stupid game well enough. Anyway, we have just about a couple pages left of this one here, so let's see how her solution shapes up. This solution means to give up, really give up, male dominance. There's no having it both ways. It means departing from that androcentric homosocial world where men talk to men about men and come up with some variation of the old solutions that maintain male centrality and dominance. Instead, it will mean not only to engage in activities that cultivate growth and enhancement in others along with oneself, it will mean relating to women as peers whose basic worth and way of being in the world are recognized as fully as men's. It means that women enter the process of history making as themselves, as subjects, determining and directing an equal share of the human discourse. How to do such a thing? How does one start? How do we step outside a history, a language, and a social order that inform our every decision? Well, stupid alarm.
I don't think even androcentrism is even a fucking thing. I don't think there's any society that was ever androcentric within the human race.
No,
ever.
No, it's not a thing. She's an idiot. It means that women enter the process of history making as themselves, as subjects, determining and directing an equal share of the human discourse. How to do such a thing? How does one start? Oh, do I ever read this part? How do we step outside a history, a language, and a social order that inform our every decision? One place to begin is to listen to those who have been marginalized, who have been placed outside the center of history. Women's stories, told from our own subjective reality, reveal a context in which men might start to address the real source of their dis-ease, with the experience of masculinity. But this process is easier said than done, for in telling our own stories, women stop functioning as mirrors to men's centrality. Men experience this act of life-threatening. They are driven back upon themselves. The ground on which they stand and may have their being is shaken. They experience an existential not knowing. It's no surprise that they react strongly, even violently, and in that moment, they have a choice. I don't know, it's just a bunch of fucking
the
woo.
blue pill or the red pill.
Yeah, it's a bunch of fucking woo.
Yeah.
It's all just woo, 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 woo.
Yeah, it's a lot of it started normally, but the more we got into this, the more conspiratorial it all got. I wouldn't be surprised if she mentioned, I don't know, Illuminati or something. Illuminati, you'll never take control.
I mean, the patriarchy basically is like a shit tier conspiracy.
Yeah.
At least the JQ has some semblance of evidence, even though that can be explained away.
At least it has some effort put into it. You can't take that away from them. Men experience this act. Let's see. So she says, to the men in our batterers groups, it is then that someone says to him that he has a choice. He can either do more of what he's done, more threats, more pressure, more intimidation to put her in her place, or he can risk hearing her and sitting with it until he begins to understand what a new response would be. To sit in the midst of that not knowing bespeaks fundamental uncertainty, an untenable position for men for whom a sense of control is essential. But the batterer who can transverse that time of not knowing begins the journey toward a new life. His own personal house of cards has fallen, but he now has access to the tools to build a new house, one founded on love instead of power, freedom instead of control, liberation instead of oppression. I wonder if she's considered if she's wrong, right? What if men already make sacrifices for women and are already concerned with female well-being, right? Well, now she's just doubling down on that,
If feminists were able to consider that they might be wrong, they wouldn't be feminists.
And it's funny how true that is, because they've never at any point been asked to really justify their theory. They're what is called conjecture.
Which is why it's important to question feminists throughout real life, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's what I do with my college that's what I used to do with my college professors before I got a college professor that actually wasn't a fucking feminist. I would just call her out and critique her, essentially, and she would actually listen to me. She I think part of the reason why is because she didn't want to make a scene, but also she actually learned that there's people who have different ideas, and that there's actually sources of information that she can read that isn't feminist.
So how's your non-feminist professor?
Oh, he's nice. He's just like this conservative man, so
Ah,
he's kind of like Jordan Peterson a little bit, but that's okay, I guess. I mean, it's better than a feminist.
Well, it's not setting the bar very high.
I mean, Jordan Peterson's kind of a meme, but like I don't know. It's an improvement because at least I don't have to fucking like blab my mouth all the time throughout class this way.
I just think of how Canadians pronounce the word God. God.
God.
Yeah, and like he says it all the time, and it's really funny.
But don't
Well, I think he's
don't
a
ask
Christian.
him if he believes in it or not.
I was not very happy about this turn of events.
Let's see. But yeah, so basically she's just saying the solution is for men to listen to women more. What a novel
just like
solution.
As if we don't listen to them enough.
Welcome, Bloody Bush Dimension. I have returned from a gay outing with an old friend. Well,
Hey.
that sounds spicy. Alright, so then she continues, for the men's movement searching for a healthy experience of maleness, this moment of choice is no less dramatic or unsettling. The decision to give up male centrality, to listen to those who have been marginalized, to be willing to perceive a broader, richer reality than male supremacy offers, means giving up all forms of controlling and abusive behaviors and learning new skills with which to negotiate the intricate, demanding transition that lies ahead. Ooh, here's another good one. For the women's movement, searching for a healthy experience of femaleness, this moment of choice is no less dramatic or unsettling. The decision to give up female centrality, to listen to those who have been marginalized, to be willing to perceive a broader, richer reality than female supremacy offers, means giving up all forms of controlling and abusive behaviors and learning new skills with which to negotiate the intricate, demanding transition that lies ahead. Bam! You know what? This article is brilliant. You just gender flip the whole thing, and it's exactly what society needs. I think she gets it. I think that she's actually red-pilled, and the entire thing is just a psychological projection and denial.
So she's red-pilled, but she doesn't know it yet.
Yeah, she's secret agent red-pilled. She's low-key. She's crypto red-pilled. That's my most charitable interpretation
She's a sleeper
of her
agent.
work. She's a sleeper agent waiting to be unlocked. Because she climbed a fucking mountain. She climbed a fucking mountain. She knows. She knows.
Is there any actual example of like a prominent, relatively well-known feminist becoming an MRA? That would be interesting.
The best would be Christina Hoff Sommers, probably. Oh, and also
yeah.
there's Karen DeCrow.
Also, Cassie B, the one who made this documentary.
Cassie J. Yeah, kinda. She wasn't really like a well-known feminist activist, though. She was more kind of just like she considered herself feminist. But yeah,
Wasn't
I mean,
she
she
basically
played
like
the
coffee shop feminist variety that you talk about?
Yeah, she would be a coffee shop feminist, I think.
It's weird because there are so many different. I mean, I know a guy who I think he said he grew up in the 80s, and back in the 80s it was mostly a middle-aged woman thing, like middle-aged and older. That is, women who identified as feminists. Now it seems to be overwhelmingly a younger generation thing, like my generation. I've seen some. Yeah, well, I've seen some numbers for people of my generation, where it's like 50% of women, but then, as in feminist self-identification. But then there are all sorts of different subgroups within that. Like, there are the ones who basically don't know shit about it. I don't know if that's the majority of them, but it's certainly a lot of them who just think it's about men and women being treated equally. And
I think that's the majority.
Right, and
honestly.
then there are all sorts of different like gradations of actual awareness of what it is, up to on the extreme end actual like rad femmes and stuff.
Well, and you can accept the definition, right, of feminism is just about equality. Okay. So that which is generally called feminism is not feminism, and that which is generally called anti-feminism is true feminism, right? You can just work with those terms and then kind of get people into looking at it, and then when it's framed in that way, then it puts them into kind of a fact-seeking mindset, right? They'll say, okay, well, you've made a claim, which is that this anti-feminist movement or these men's movements are actually doing the real work, so make your case, and it's a pretty easy case to make, I think. But the other thing, too, is as far as women identifying as feminists, the other thing to keep in mind, though, is if you put forth a policy that's extremely gynocentric, right? Like, should men be taxed to pay for free money for women? The women are all going to vote for it. Whereas if you did the reverse for men, I think the majority of men would be rather appalled by the suggestion.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what they say. That's what the phrase "all women are feminists" come from, which is.
More like most women are gynocentric.
The majority of who would be appalled by what suggestion? Sorry, I missed that.
The majority of men would be appalled by the suggestion that you tax women to pay for men.
All right. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because if not, we'd see that implemented, right? and it goes without saying that the majority of women would be opposed to such a thing.
Yeah, there seems to be a really fairly strong correlation between the level of economic development of a country and treating women like infants. Presumably because it's like you get to a point where the world is already decently safe, but men still want to protect women, and women still want men to protect them, so you have to... the definition of what counts as a problem for women just grows and grows and grows. Yeah, it's not clear if there's any solution to it.
No, that makes perfect sense, and that's actually one reason that I'm so skeptical of like TFM, who always says, "Oh, well, there's no problem with women. Women don't need to change," but it's kind of like it seems like they do.
Wait,
it really seems like they do. Like. Yeah, because we can't just maintain this patriarchal balance where we ask more and more and more and more for men, because if women truly are hypergamous and truly are seeking for something that's better each time, then they're never going to be satiated. At some point we have to draw a line and say, man up, woman.
Yeah, like at this point, if TFM was actually true, I guess, I mean, he is a smart guy, but that's the main thing that I do disagree with him on. And basically his solution is to get the not transhumanism, I think it's artificial wombs, and I do think that actually would help, but I don't think that we can also tell women to fucking man up a little bit. That's not outside their boundaries.
Well, yeah.
And I think what he'll do is he'll conflate that with making women completely equally as responsible as men. I don't think that's going to be a thing, at least not for a long ass fucking time, but that would be a conflation that he would probably make. I'm just saying, no, this, make them not be so fucking irresponsible or have such lack of responsibility that they're basically fucking infants.
Yeah, well, his argument is that to a large degree they can't, and that if you hold them to a male standard, they're gonna break down and crumble because they can't. They're not smart enough. They're not strong enough, is what he'll say. But he has the thing to clarify.
Selection never sleeps, eh?
Yeah, basically.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, he has multiple solutions, right? He has a whole tier of them where if one fails, then he goes to plan B, then C, then D. So he does have a pretty complex way of going about it that, he's covered a lot of bases, and he doesn't think what he thinks for necessarily bad reasons. But I do think that that's a unique problem that I'm not sure he's ever really addressed, is this idea that women are going to constantly demand higher and higher standards with more and more insane definitions for what constitutes danger, just to kind of keep this facade going of protect me.
Yeah, I don't know what his objection would be to just basically altering the nature of human beings in some way. And I actually think that especially if he's on board with transhumanism and artificial uteri and stuff, because I actually think that altering women to make them more resilient is basically, I think that's more practical than trying to edit the gynocentrism out of men.
I think I just rather edit the gynocentrism out of men, but whatever. I mean, it has the same results at the end of the day.
That's an interesting way of framing it, right? Because isn't asking men to stop being gynocentric, isn't that kind of like asking women to man up, right? Like, so the question of which one is less realistic is actually a pretty interesting one. I suppose ideally we'd kind of meet halfway, you know?
I guess so, yeah. I mean, I don't think gay men. For example, I don't think like my little theory is that I don't think gay men are gynocentric.
No, they
I think
are.
that the most they are.
I'd say they are.
Yeah. Or at the very least, less gynocentric, because
it's a different dynamic, I think. So that makes it difficult to compare. But I would say that gay men are not immune to gynocentrism.
Oh, they're not. I'm just saying. I think it's a lot harder for a gay man to be like.
I don't think the nature of the dynamic is completely reliant upon sexual attraction, because men will be more deferential even to old and ugly women. So, like, yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But then, at the very least, you also have to meet me halfway, I think, in the respect that gay men will probably be less gynocentric than a straight man. Like, if that's just my observation.
You mean they have less of an incentive, yeah.
Less of an incentive. Like, for example, I don't think a gay man is going to tolerate as much as a straight man, because they have less incentive.
It's kind of like you have two separate pens, right? And, like, all the straight men are locked up in a pen, and the gay men are sitting in an open pen, but, like, they're just sitting in the pen. And at some point you point, it's like, hey, you know, the door is open. And the gay men are like, oh, yeah, shit, it is. And the gay men kind of walk out easier. But predominantly, they're all the men are still in their pens. You know, the straight men are gonna have to hop over their pen, or have maybe have the gay men break down the door or something. but the gay men, I think, are largely kind of just like sitting around in the pen because they dressed it up. It's really nice, you know. They feng shuied it and everything. They don't want to leave the nice little pen, but the door is open.
Yep.
All right, let's close out this page here. She says, to imagine what is possible, I would like to call forth the famous Gestalt illustration of what is obviously a white vase on a black background. If we study it long enough, a shift in perception occurs, and we find ourselves seeing instead two faces in profile facing each other. I just want to note that I'm not sure if she's joking when she says obviously, because I totally saw two faces first when I first saw that thing.
Yeah, it depends on person. It's like one of those ambiguous rotation gifts where some people think it's clockwise, some counterclockwise, because you're looking at its edge on. So it's could be either way.
Yeah, but I'm curious if she's being facetious when she says, "Oh, it's obviously a white vase," and then it changes, right?
I think she really believes it.
Yeah, maybe. Suddenly, the vase, so prominent in our first look, has become background for the faces. We find we can now see two pictures, the white vase, for which the black is ground, or two faces in profile for which the white is ground. Each is figure, each is ground, but never at the same time. But now we have recognized and given value to both images. We are able to move back and forth between them at will. In the same way, when men recognize and give value to women's experience, they gain the skill of seeing broader possibilities of human existence. They create the opportunity to make a choice. I'm just like, the way she wrote that is so fucking pretentious. Like, yeah, it's a neat little optical trick. Okay.
The analogy isn't as clever as she thinks it is.
It's really not. But, I mean, has it occurred to her that when it comes to gendered issues that she hasn't seen the second image yet? She seems to take for a given that reality is the the male-oriented image, right? And that in her just being a solipsistic brat and demanding free crap from men and demanding more from men, that she hasn't really seen the second image. She's just doubled down on the first image she saw. But of course, that's what she's accusing the mythopoetic men's movement of doing.
Well, yeah, feminists are not known for their, keen sense of self-awareness.
See, but this is the problem, though, with this whole analysis. Like, ultimately, most of what I'm saying in response to her kind of boils down to a no you. And, like, she hasn't really given enough reasoning. It's been just a lot of a lot of just like dancing around with wordplay to try to make her point, and that she hasn't made enough like strong claims to actually like so you can actually point to people and show them like, no, here's how she's wrong. All of these women who write these articles in this book, very few of them are citing like real statistics. They might drop in one or two here or there, but they take it as a given that women are oppressed, and that's where they're going from. So if you come into it with a perspective that challenges it, it's just a bunch of it's just them restating their conclusion over and over and over again, and then their conclusions are always fucking communism. And these are supposed to be like big feminist thinkers. These are the ContraPoints of the 90s.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. That's the quality of arguments you'd expect from ContraPoints or some other idiot like this.
ContraPoints.
Yeah.
Bloody Bush says actually both are gynocentric due to the same body. Oh, that's straight in game. I thought you were talking about the two versions of the images, but anyway. Alright, she concludes, using the genre of fairy tales, so important to the mythopoetic movement, this is a story where an evil monster casts a spell over the people, keeping everyone suspended until finally the hero dares to confront the monster and break the spell. We are all kept spellbound by the ideology of male supremacy as the natural order, ordained in creation. Exposing the monster's false power, thus breaking the spell, happens when a man dares to enter the realm of women's reality. A man breaks rank with other men when they make women's reality their referent. All the power of the social order gathers itself to prevent his going there. A man who dares this act. What a weird way to say that. Who dares this act defects from the homeland of patriarchy. The defector knows he can no longer live in his home, so he gives up position, status, and possessions, slipping off under cover of night for an unfamiliar destination. He betrays those who have trusted him to remain true to an idea, a place, a collective identification. Where he is going, he risks being regarded with suspicion, of not being readily accepted, because of what he has left. He makes his choice from the private knowledge that patriarchy is killing him, too, as it is killing others. He understands that to save himself means not grasping the patriarchy closer, but letting it die, even the part of it that resides within himself.
Beautiful.
That's the end of this fucking garbage.
Thank God.
Ding dong. Ding dong, it's dead. Ding dong, the monster's been slayed. Well, any thoughts on anything on the last stretch of that here?
Oh, this was painful. It started off pretty normal. I had high hopes, but well, I guess should have been high to endure this. Ugh.
I mean, it had some cringy moments as well, and there's some like points of ignorance a lot of the time. But I thought it was gonna be worse. But maybe that's because I joined in quite late. So I don't know.
I'd say that the first essay was much more interesting and much more flavorful. Yeah, but and then this one I think was much more bland. But at least with the second article, she's kind of stated her standpoint kind of, I guess, semi-clearly. She seems to kind of made the whole case in the very beginning of it, and the rest of it was a kind of a very, very irrelevant. But this is interesting in that you can flip so many of these paragraphs. Like, so many of these paragraphs are perfectly diametrically 180 degrees wrong that they make awesome gender flips. And, like, I like this last paragraph as not talking about the male feminist, right? Her argument here is this is the male feminist, right? The male feminist has defected from the patriarchal homeland, and now he's a traitor in his own land, but he is going to be the hero who slays the dragon, right? Well, no. This is not accurate of the male feminist. The male feminist is given laurels. The male feminist is celebrated in society. And if you need any evidence of this, just look up that clip of the MRA, the PUA, and the male feminist on that Faith whatever.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. And all the women are cheering on the male feminist, and they're responding to the PUA exactly the way that he describes them. And the MRA is pointing out to them, do you see what you're doing? You are proving both of them right. Like, this guy here is sleazy and he's deceiving you and giving you lies and you're buying into it, and the way you're acting is completely validating every awful thing that you hate about the PUA, right? And like he's like, I'm wearing this skirt to bait you into doing exactly what you're going to do, and then they do it, and there's zero self-awareness, right? And like that male feminist, this woman will have us believe that that male feminist is treated the way that the PUA guy is or whatever, right? It's completely ridiculous. But if you look at this paragraph as describing not the male feminist, but the man who goes MGTOW, it makes perfect sense. A man who dares this act of MGTOW, going his own way, defects from the homeland of patriarchy. The defector knows he can no longer live in his home, so he gives up position, status, and possession, slipping off under cover of night for an unfamiliar destination. He betrays those who have trusted him to remain true to an idea, a place, a collective identification. Right? Like, how could this not be true of MGTOW? He's regarded with suspicion. Like, hi, bachelor laws are a thing, right? At least were a thing. Like, it fits the MGTOW argument.
I don't even know what bachelor laws are a fucking thing. What are they?
Basically, men, I think it was above a certain age. Yeah, it was like from the age of 25 or something, were taxed for being single, essentially.
Oh, that's fucking stupid.
Yeah, so they would do this to encourage men to marry women, because they'd be concerned otherwise that you'd have all of these, girls that were just staying with their parents forever and not being wedded off. So
it was also
it's like trying to use the government to solve problems in the dumbest way possible. Fucking statists.
Was also used apparently to fund wars at some point, like war with France, on the part of Britain. But they dumped the policy. I guess it wasn't very effective.
Yeah, it's freaking stupid.
No, it's not going. Of course, it's not going to be effective.
Yeah. Well, so those are a couple of the articles. I think there's like 4 or 5 of them left, and about like 4 weeks until the ICMI. So most of them are kind of shorter like that. I kind of like it when there's a couple of short ones versus like the long droning ones we've had before. I thought this was a little bit more sprightly. But
yeah,
I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream because we're at 2.5 hours. That's usually about where these are. So
cool.
All right, it was fun having being on here, guys.
Yeah, it's refreshing having you on here as well. And yeah, they made a nice conversation here.
Yeah.
Everybody in chat, thank you for stopping by. Anybody want to shill anything or say any goodbyes or anything like that?
Well, subscribe to my channel.
Yeah, that's right. I need to go through and I need to put your channel in the description of each of them. So I'll make sure I do that. Privileged Sheev Lord.
We need to defeat the femoid menace with the gay bomb from Alex Jones.
Yeah, and Ashley Messenger writes articles for altleft.com. I guess that's probably the best website to plug anything you do, right?
Yeah, go to altleft.com to read mine and Brandon Adamson's articles if it's something you care about. Yeah.
Alright, sounds like a plan. Alright, everybody, keep it easy.
Yep, bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.